Thanks for tuning in to this episode of I Have Something to Say, where subject matter experts are unafraid and unapologetic about sharing their perspectives regarding issues that impact our lives. They speak up because basically they give a shit. So if you're tired of canned answers and want to finally hear real people cut through the BS and talk about real issues, this is the podcast for you. I'm your host, Samí from Urbander, and behind our mixer is our producer, Chris Majoka from UdoU.
Hi, everyone. Today we have a special roundtable edition of I Have Something to Say. We gathered up our crew so we can just share what we've discussed individually and also as a group, but offline, having to do with new chapters. With this whole situation, let's call it a negative situation, which is all of 2020, or most of it in any event. There's always a silver lining, and we tend to be very positive and optimistic in our outlook most of the time. And so after we've had all of these months of coping, of grieving what was our normal, of adapting to new situations and coming to terms with, that's it, we're kind of stuck, right? with a new way. We've also had a moment to pause and reflect on new chapter, like really starting a new chapter and looking at new opportunities and promising things. And so it's this idea of looking at the silver lining, even in the midst of very difficult and challenging situations. And so we wanted to come together today to just go through each one of our team members and share. Moving forward, it's October. There's a lot of activity, a lot going on, a lot of hopeful transitions in our midst. And so we just wanted to, see what's going on, what's cooking, on your end, because I wouldn't be surprised if many other people are also exploring a new chapter in their lives or new opportunities that some might have been put into, sometimes you put a pin on some plans and then it's like, wait a second, let me dust that off and take it out of the drawer. Or sometimes they're just completely unexpected. And so, I know we all, because I know you. I know there's a lot going on. And so I don't know, Xaulanda, you want to kick us off?
Sure. As you said, there's a lot going on. I think for me, the thing that I'm most excited about, it's been an ongoing journey with my PhD studies in industrial organizational psychology. Over the summer, I completed my comprehensive exams. What a wait. But that creates a new chapter now where I'm starting my dissertation and I'm going through the institutional review board approval. And so it's kind of opened up this whole new chapter. I'm no longer doing coursework, but now it's almost like the sky's the limit in respect to my topic. And I'm just doing a lot of research and looking at literature, and I'm focusing on predicting work passion. One of the things that would bother me when I worked in the more corporate setting is I had employees that on Monday morning, they hated Mondays and they loved Fridays, right? And I'm like, okay, I get that, but what can I do as a leader to help my employees feel excited to come to work on Monday? And that was one of the reasons I decided to pursue the PhD. So with this whole dissertation process, thank God for my mentors who's guiding me through it. But I think I see it as an opportunity to create a program to help organizations and leaders create climates that employees are happy that Monday morning comes up, right? So that's what I'm excited about. That's my new chapter that it's a little scary. but I'm already 80% through the PhD process, girlfriend. You better push through the last 20.
So exciting to see you through that
Absolutely.
process, through the peaks and valleys, the highs and lows. It's
The
been a
roller
roller
coaster of
coaster.
emotion, right?
Yes, totally, totally. It's been really great, and you've been able to. I feel like all of this time that we've spent at home because we've been working remotely, that's been kind of like a silver lining in the sense that you've been able to put your head down and really focus on writing and getting through that really hard part, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I tend to stress myself out, I took the Enneagram and I'm a number one, which is a perfectionist. So according to my daughter, who's a 21-year-old, she's like, Ma, you're always doing the most. Why you don't just do what they asked you for? You gotta go like above and beyond. And I'm like, please. But she has a point because I just totally stressed myself out for no reason. And I'm like, okay. So part of my new chapter is just learning to go with the flow and follow the process and trust that what I'm doing is going to be good enough to, to pass the high standards for the PhD. So
Yeah, that's
yeah.
fantastic. Yeah. What
Mhm.
about you, Luna? What's your new chapter, new thing, or new aha, discovery?
Well, for me, I have a way of seeing life kind of different. I have the not the opportunity, but I've had to live very difficult experiences, which have made me see life as an opportunity, and to realize that there's always a choice. I think that
Mhm.
at the beginning of the year, we always make our the our goals, and we say this year I'm going to do this or do that, but I don't think that anyone had any idea of what really was going to happen. And that what that tells you is that you always need to be open to change, and you have to embrace it. This
Mhm.
process, as I see it, is like a grieving process. It's had many stages, and I think that at this point we are already at the acceptance stage, and when you
Mhm.
get
Mm,
acceptance, you can only move forward. So that's what I'm
Mhm.
trying to do. I'm trying to move forward, and I'm one of the things that's keeping me very excited at this new chapter is that SOS is like really taking off. It's like
Mhm.
crazy. I had no idea that it was gonna happen like this, but it's really taking off, and there's so many new things that can happen that are in the in the planning, and that really
Mhm.
gets me very very excited to be able to be a part of that, with everything that's happening, everything that we're being with that we can say yet, but we've been working on, and it's gonna happen. So
Mhm.
I'm focusing on that, and for me, it's a period of change. Also, I my decided to do some changes in my life, which I will still be working remotely. That's not going to change, but there's going to be some changes in my life that are going to be challenging by themselves. So an opportunity for change, for growth, for expansion, to look into
Mhm.
new and crazy ideas, to do things that otherwise you wouldn't have the opportunity. You were in your comfort zone. You were in your daily grind, in every day doing the same things, and this has propelled you to try and open new doors, and do new things that you never thought you were going to be able to do. So that's really how I see this new
yes,
phase.
and yeah, totally. And I could
Mhm.
see it too. During, and just for everybody out there, SOS is the nonprofit that we founded 3 years ago. It's going to be a third year anniversary now for the
Mhm.
nonprofit. Because before 2017, we still did a lot of community work. It was just, and we still do. Urbander does, and I know that Chris does too. Um,
Mhm.
but in 2017, we founded a nonprofit. It's called SOS by Urbander, and Luna is the executive director. And she transitioned into that full time role earlier this year, even before the pandemic. We didn't even
Mhm.
know, and
Mhm.
now we know why, right? Because the community has so many needs now, and the provision of support from capacity building, career preparation, really at the grassroots level in dual language. You know, it's something that she does very well. Yeah, I mean, who knew, right, that we had been preparing that, and then now we have all of these programs and all of this support from government and other like-minded organizations that are really helping sustain the programming that
Yeah.
you're working on. I'm really excited. What out of everything that you're working on, just tell us a little bit about what has struck you as a surprise, you know, that you had not expected.
Well, there's a couple of things, but before I get to that, I think that this has created the environment that we were looking for, people working together. That's something that we always said that this community needed, and it's happened because of the COVID pandemic, that we have started working together and pooling our resources together and try to move forward as a group instead of just each one pulling on their own end. So I think that one of the things that has happened is the GAP project. I think that's a very cutting edge project. The GAP project is the gender
Advancement project.
advancement project, and it's an organization that we are serving as a fiscal sponsor. We are helping them take off, and it's a project that it's led by trans women of color. And there's great things happening with that project, and that's one of the unexpected things that happened.
Yeah.
We were already working with Del Ambiente, but Del Ambiente has a wider, it's a different project, although it also works with the LGBTQ community, but it is a different project. The GAP is especially, I feel, more attached to it, if you will, because it's led by women. And that's what makes it very special. And both of them, they're incredible people. So
in retrospect, when you look at the journey 3 years ago when we were doing the talleres de bienvenida as a corporate responsibility effort for Urbander, it's almost, when you look back, you have hindsight as 2020, because you could see how what we would have considered maybe chance encounters at the time actually were links to this chain that has been created throughout all of SOS programming. So we had the Talleres de Bienvenida, and then we were doing workforce development under Urbander for recent arrivals from Puerto Rico. And now all of this is on SOS platform, and we've been able to expand relationships and connections and programming. So, you know, when you take time to pause sometimes and look back, because we're always tend to look at what we need to do or what we haven't accomplished. But if you look back and you say, wow, we've done a lot, you know, we've grown a lot, we've benefited a lot, we've provided a lot of support, and we've had a great impact, then it propels you forward.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally. What about you, Chris? Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. You go ahead, Chris.
No, finish up.
That when you have that I've learned, especially from Samí, because she has a way of being that when she has faith in a project, she lets you. She goes for it, and then she knows that it's going to happen. That somehow, you know, the universe, God will put it together. So there's gonna be a way to do it, and it's just a matter of waiting, and that's proven to be true. That when you have faith in a project, you just put it there, you put it out there, and eventually people are gonna come together and they're gonna make it happen. So that's a very big lesson learned there.
Yeah. Well, thank you for saying that. The thing is, when you know that there's a need, and you know that that the resources are there, and that it needs attention, you need to try, and sometimes the timing is not right, you know, but then all of a sudden it's like, holy cow, now where is that project? Where is that, you know, maybe this is the person that can make it happen. You know? And so we've seen a lot of that.
And you're gonna get a lot of no's, and that kind of reminds me of something that Chris said in one of the podcasts. When people tell you no, you remember, Chris? That when people tell you no, it was like a very long time ago, but I remember something you said, that when people tell you no, they're not telling you no. They're telling you that there's another way of
Not
doing
now.
it.
Yep.
It's that now.
When every door shuts, a window opens. So.
Exactly.
Yes, totally. Well, the thing is, my background is in sales. So I got when I used to be in publishing and sold that's how I first started in media, was selling advertising, and boy, did I get a lot of no's. So I'm used to it. I know that you just keep chipping away, and
You
the
wear
no
them
is not
down.
gonna exactly, yeah, or convince them. When you have something that's good, it's just a matter of time. And then once that door opens, or you get that first one, then everybody wants to jump in. So at least that's been my experience. So yeah, absolutely. And so I feel like that's what's happening. Like with SOS, it's like all of a sudden you've been able to prove outcomes, and then all of a sudden, we've attracted the right people, to the platform. So I think it's great, and thank you, Luna, for everything you do. Really, because you're kind of like running the whole thing solo. I'm like, oh, that's for Luna. That's a Luna question. It's been great. What about you, Chris?
Well, I guess really to touch on a couple things. So you guys mentioned, A, having the connections, and then B, the links of the work that you were doing previously. So I think in my first kind of, year and a half, 2 years of business, it was more, it was still sort of an experiment of whether my whole dream to do like cause-based and story-driven film and video production was a viable business model, and whether I could continue working with nonprofits and community initiatives and make a living off of that. And then, of course, when COVID hit, that actually ended up being immediately something that made me very busy, because all these nonprofits and community initiatives that I was already working with all of a sudden need to get, more important content about mental health, substance abuse, etc., people struggling during quarantine. And then the beginning of this year was also kind of interesting, because I had just in January, I made a very big investment in my company for a really nice new cinema camera, because I was, out shooting physically everywhere all the time. And then certainly once quarantine happened, I was like, all right, well, I have to figure out how to pay this off, and there's no place for me to go physically to film. So the whole transition to the online and virtual recordings, we turned this podcast into a video podcast during COVID, now doing different things with branding, testing out different equipment and things like that. And my business has changed in many ways to lend itself now to that. So I still offer my traditional film and video production, but these online services are a whole thing that I never anticipated getting into. And developing just online content, courses, podcasts, video casts, things like that, have really actually become an enjoyable thing. And I get to work, professionally from the waist up and pajama pants on the bottom.
We can all relate.
Exactly. But really, and then I would just say the connections as well. There are, we already had started working together, Urbender and UdoU previously, and I had other people that I was like starting to figure out how to work with. But really, when this all happened, those phone calls started, and it's like, hey, what are you doing? Because I'm trying to figure it out too. And now, I'm collaborating with a number of different people, and a lot more so with Urbender. And I think those things just weren't anticipated, but are new chapters that are leading to very exciting things where, to Luna's point, instead of everybody working in their own silos and trying to just make it on their own, really realizing that when people are collaborating, you can get a lot more done. And it's a lot better to have, 10% of a watermelon than 100% of a grape.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I love that. Yeah. We've fostered more collaborations. It's been incredible. Really? I mean, I never thought that we'd be working with you like daily,
Like, right?
and on several projects. It's been really awesome. And then the film too.
Mhm.
Like your documentary film, we had done this great launch in December of 2019, and we had all these plans for it for 2020, and all of a sudden it's like, now what?
Right.
Like, how are you going to get into film festivals
Yep.
and everything? And it turns out that you've participated in several, have
Mhm.
been awarded, prizes in several film festivals. You're participating one before the year ends
Yep.
again, and you're already like thinking, okay, what's my next film?
Right.
And you're actually in the process of recording that. We won't talk
Yep.
about what it is yet. But your next documentary is already in the works.
Exactly.
And anyway, so yeah, how do you feel about that? I mean, did you even think, you'd be working on your second documentary so quickly? And then in the midst of all this crazy work you've been doing too.
Certainly no. During COVID, I did not think a second documentary was going to be on the table, but really, yeah. I mean, again, and being able to work virtually and taking some of that time out of my commute and stuff like that has allowed me to spend a little more time figuring out what other projects are needed, and I think especially during these times, there are a number of stories that need to be told and need to have a platform. But I kind of thought that documentary filmmaking was on hold for a while, both with the, again, released the film in December of this past year, and then this year, had submitted to a bunch of film festivals and stuff, and then a few of them were canceled right off the bat, and I was like, all right, well, kind of maybe just lost the legs out from under that that film, and then it turned out, and I also didn't want to be pushing it. I was going to launch a a crowdfunding campaign and stuff, but then I was like, well, people have a lot more, bigger fish to fry right now than to be spending on creative stuff, which those things are always needed, but there are people that are just trying to put food on their table.
Right.
And so I kind of thought, yeah, it was gonna go, but started, film festivals started adapting, making virtual festivals. The importance of like human interest stories with, one of the sponsors for Hispanic Heritage Month when we just screened it there with AARP. And yeah, I mean, just starting these new documentaries are really, and honestly, there's so much more weight behind them because we can really tell somebody's story and then also compare it to, all right, and then how did that change with COVID, or with, the situations with, after George Floyd, and how has that impacted people. And I think it's really just lending itself to telling more stories. And, if I'm not out there telling them, who's going to have that platform. So that's it's just been very exciting to, now already have a couple actually in the works. One's already almost finished. The other one's going to be a 2-year project, but getting things out here before this, upcoming election and stuff, it's just been not how I expected it to go. Everybody said hindsight was going to be, or hindsight's 2020, and really, I think it's really helped us reflect on where we were, help us reevaluate, and now I think many people, and I think including the people on this call, have things happening now that never would have happened had we not had everything that has gone on during 2020. And a lot of it for the negative, but if you persevere and keep looking for the silver lining or the light at the end of the tunnel, I think there's some really interesting things that wouldn't have anticipated beforehand.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with that. And it has to do also with those passion projects, looking at those passion projects that you've had. I mean, that I feel like that's happened a lot, to us as a group. Now I'm talking about Urbender, that we've worked throughout the years, on these ideas. Every time we take a road trip and we're like, oh, this sounds like a great idea. We jot it down, and then we develop the one pager, and it's like, oh my God, we need this, and this. But we happen to have this and that, but we're missing the middle part, It's like, okay, forget it. This right now, it's just not the right time. And so we found ourselves, being involved in certain, let's call them spheres of influence, where all of a sudden it's like, wait a second, did you just say that? Because I have something, And so that sparked or ignited some opportunities where then you share with people within your circle of trust, and they run with it. You know, I got to say, like, for example, the Casa Culture project that we're looking to spearhead now, you know, it was like, you know, by me being on this Arts and Culture Council for the county, all of a sudden it's like, wait a second, weren't we working on something that had to do, you know, with this? And then you pull it out of the drawer, send it to the right person, which is Bob Kovacevic, you know, who we just met this time last year, you know, but it's given us an opportunity to really get to know each other, right? Now that he's been participating on the virtual meetings of the council, you know, and I've been a lot more vocal now too, because I'm now the chair of the newly created Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, you know, and so you see, but it's like all of these things are happening. And so wait a second, that project maybe now we could put some life into it, shared it with him, and he's like running with it. He's like, oh my God, this is exactly what, you know, we need here in Central Florida. I'm like, okay, good. I'm glad you agree, because we came to that almost a year and a half ago, you know? And I remember it was in a coffee shop with Jamal.
Yep.
Right? And everyone that's here, and Nancy was there too, Nancy Rosado. So, you know, so that's one of the unexpecteds, you know, here that we've had here.
Yeah.
Another thing that's been very unexpected for us too is, to me anyway, LinkedIn. LinkedIn has been a space to connect with old friends, like people I haven't spoken to in 20 years. And that sounds like such a long time, but if I go, I mean, that's how long I've been working, right? For 25 years. So, you know, and then it takes 5 years to have, you know, develop really strong relationships. But these are people, you know, from way, way back, you know, that all of a sudden either are freelancing or, you know, want some advice, you know, on their resume, or are looking for, you know, our expertise or some counsel, and then bam, all of a sudden you're like sitting on a panel, you know, you're meeting somebody different. We also got a mentor out of the blue, a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend, you know, Mercedes's friends, right? All the way in Minnesota. We're in Orlando, you know, out of the blue. This really nice man reaches out through LinkedIn. He's like, I've been watching you guys. And I'm like, okay. You know, and, you know, I'm talking about Tony, right? And he's like, yes. And so my background is in, you know, XY industry, finance, you know, over 25 years. I'm retired. And I'm like, okay. And then we keep on talking. We make an appointment. We actually speak and meet. And in that conversation, I'm like, okay, so what do you propose? And he's like, nothing. I just like what you guys are doing. And I'm like, Tony, are you my mentor? Or like, is this like, is this just like happening? You know? And he's like, yeah, I like you. And I want to see you scale and I want to see you succeed. And I'm like, holy cow, look at that. You know? And it's been awesome. You know, Xaulanda's met him already, and we're being guided by him, but he's just wonderful. You know, he's already put us in touch with a prospective, you know, collaborator and client and partner. And so, you know, so we're working on tapping into new industries that we have because our forte is in healthcare, you know, but we're now diving into other sectors thanks to Tony's guidance. Like, you know, because sometimes you're like, it's not so much, well, yeah, not lack of confidence, but also just not knowing how to navigate certain sectors and spaces, you know, and just to have him as a guide has been just absolutely wonderful. And I feel like the last thing, so it's like, right, old friends who are calling in and saying, hey, could you, you know, do you want to collaborate on this? And it's awesome because it's like, yeah, I always loved working with you, you know, and it's like, why did we not, you know, stay in touch as closely, you know? And so it's nice because it's like meeting, like hooking up with a family member that you haven't seen for a long time. Then new friends new friends have come up too. And then in those relationships also, expansion into new markets or doing things that are beyond our wildest dreams that impact more people. I feel that that's another thing that came out of this whole experience, is that the big learning was how to use virtual platforms to really amplify, the work you're doing and reach more people, and also collaborate with others in other places. So now, we were on a awesome call just yesterday with a team out in Atlanta, and so Urban is very excited to support another minority-owned business by another woman of color, our friend Lakeisha Merritt, and her company Chronology. We'll have her on the show soon to talk about this big project that we're working on with Georgia Tech and Morehouse College. Just a lot of really big things that I'm like, what? Like we're really working, on these freaking awesome projects, but it's because I feel like we're all pulling together, like Xaulanda mentioned at the beginning, and Lunna actually mentioned, about how everyone's just pulling together to put our resources to work. And then like Chris said, because we're people, it's like an aha moment, right? You know what? It's better 10% of a watermelon.
Yep.
Than 100% of a grape. Yep. I love that. And so it's a mindset shift, that I feel like we've all experienced, and I think it's very powerful. So this is exciting, a lot of exciting stuff.
Absolutely.
Any closing comments, Xaulanda?
No, I just think this year has been interesting. Mercedes uses this term a lot. It's been a blessing in disguise, and as much challenges that we've experienced throughout this year, there are also unexpected opportunities that came out of it. So I think the fact that we were all in COVID together, we were all feeling that pain together, kind of reinforced that collective spirit that, if we're going to come out of this, we need to kind of lean in on each other, help each other to be able to come out of this chapter and hopefully a brighter, better new chapter.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. What about you, Lunna? Any closing comments?
I think that for me, what you can extrapolate from this experience is that you never should take things for granted. You should appreciate everything and never take anything for granted, because it's just like the grieving process. You don't know what you have until you lose it. So learn to appreciate what you have, live in the moment, and appreciate what you have at the moment. So this is going to change how people face their New Year's resolution, how the people plan, because that someday, out of the blue, everything can be changed. So be open to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Chris?
Yeah, I think, and I think maybe just one thing that we didn't really touch on here, I think some of you kind of mentioned it with, connecting with people from, 20 years ago and back home and everything. I think one of the interesting things for me this year was, I think before COVID, I sort of felt this, that our whole country and everybody was just on like a high speed train with no really clear vision of where it was going. It was just like more, develop, move, like, hurry. And I think a lot of insight on where we came from was starting to be lost, and we were just focused on where we were going. And I think COVID really helped put, because we all had, Zoom and Skype and Teams and everything like that before COVID, but nobody was, for professional purposes, people were using it. But yeah, now I have like, a couple happy hours or get-togethers with, high school friends or people back home. And I think we've talked about this before too. We've even like culturally, there's, different events even here in Central Florida where it's like, a fusion of cultures and bringing together of cultures. But I think one thing that I've always stressed with that is you have to focus on where those cultures came from and not just the fusion. And I think for me, it's been really interesting just looking back and connecting again with people and I think almost through that and reconnecting with where I was from, because I'm from Boston, and so hanging out with friends or talking with friends from back up there, and then working down here. I think it's just given me a better balance of a perspective, and I think that's really also been helping to influence the new chapters that are opening up. But yeah, I think 2020 is really a time of reflection, and I think a lot of the new chapters owe themselves to reopening some old chapters. So
yes, absolutely. One of the big things that have become part of my daily routine is just to give thanks. I am so thankful, so thankful, because I know what people are going through, and so to be in a position where we can help, has been a privilege, and I don't take that for granted, Luna, what you just said. I am so grateful to all of our partners, to our collaborators, to our clients, to you guys. You guys are freaking amazing. Scott's not here. He's upstairs working. To my kids, who are working independently. Well, one of them is working independently. The other one's kind of like this whole virtual thing. That's a whole other program, So, but you know what? I'm trying not to stress it. I'm just so grateful that we're in a position where we can, create content, that we have, a support system that we can count on, and that we're being able to stay true to our values throughout this process, and not compromise our integrity, and just put out the best of what we have out there, and that the work has been coming in. I mean, what a blessing. What a blessing. I mean, it's been incredible, and I'm so thankful to everybody who's entrusted, their business to us or their programs to us. Just knowing that we're gonna, do our extra super duper best to follow through and make them look good, and for the recommendations, really, because it's what's been able to keep us going, sustain us, and quite frankly, we're on a pathway to really landing on two solid feet on the other side of this, and do really, really well, so that way we can continue to help others. I'm on this mindset right now, and you're gonna laugh, right? But like, we need to build wealth in our communities. That's it. Like, that's all I've been like focused on. It's like doing good work, connecting to the right people, so we can impact, social mobility, and really create opportunity for all communities to thrive. I don't care where you're from or what you look like. You could be from Mars for all I care. But that's it. That's really been, I think our MO, since this whole thing happened, is how can we leverage what little talents we have, right? Or what our strengths are, to really impact others, so then they can, be lifted up and move forward, all of us together. And so anyway, I'm beyond honored, to be working with you guys. I love you, and
We love you.
yeah, and it's like, I don't want to cry, but it's like, it's been really, everyone just follows through. It's just so awesome because it's seamless. It's seamless, and that's why it works. And so that I just pray that everybody out there, that this new chapter that you're writing, it's going to be a good one. It's going to be really, really a good one. Look at the positive things. Try to find that silver lining and follow your passion points. That's like the recipe for writing a new chapter. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this episode, this roundtable edition of I Have Something to Say. We'll make sure to see you next week. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
This concludes this episode of I Have Something to Say. We want to thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to tell your friends about us. We're on Spotify and iTunes as well. There's more to come next week. And remember, if you have something to say, it's time to speak up.